I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now Show.
Hello, everyone. Today is something a little different. We're turning the tables, and I am the guest. So renegade Syama Bunten, who is the host of the Getting Rich Together podcast, interviewed me all about money. Every aspect of money, my money stories growing up, my money experiences, investing, saving, my relationship with money, my beliefs, my lessons from all of the incredible people I've had an opportunity to work from or work with. And it's very unique. It was interesting. I don't think I've ever had a conversation like this or shared a lot of these stories. So I thought you might want to hear, given that money is such a focus for renegades, right? We're always reinventing our relationship with money and time and with ourselves. So without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Syama and myself on the Getting Rich Together podcast, which is her podcast. Also, please know that the 2025 Renegade Accelerator will be open for enrollment very soon. If you want to get your application in now, you absolutely can. Head to renegade.global. All the information is there, and I hope to see your name pop up.
Amy Jo Martin, you are known far and wide as a powerful leader, unlocking voices to create change. I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you for being here and welcome to Getting Rich Together.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited about this conversation. I feel like it's going to be equal parts therapy, equal parts money, because those two go hand in hand, don't they?
Yes, they do. And as most therapists start when they meet with a client, they start from the beginning. So let's take it back to the beginning and start with the young, innocent Amy Jo Martin, who's growing up in this big, beautiful world. What was life like for you? What were the money expanders around you? What did your parents talk about? Let's talk about young money.
Young money. Okay, I can't wait. I'll paint you a picture. And I just want to thank you for having these conversations too first, because it is so important. And this is one of the number one things I want to talk about. So young Amy, oh goodness. I'm going to take you to the trailer park. So I grew up in a trailer. It's 18 feet wide. And I was just talking with my mom about this the other day, how when you're smaller, size is all relative to what contrast you have. And so it didn't feel small to me, but we want to go back and visit the trailer. So we moved our trailer around from small town to small town. My father worked in heavy highway construction as an engineer, and we would just go to the next job, big job. And sometimes we were in Wyoming and sometimes we were in Kansas and then eventually Arizona. And I've lived in a lot of different places, but humble beginnings and a lot of lessons, a lot of probably neural pathways being carved out, from that experience. And it really taught me how to adapt. I'm very comfortable with change. You change schools enough and you kind of embrace it.
And so when you were younger and you were sitting around the table in whichever city you happened to be in and your family was providing for you and giving you early lessons around life, how to spend money or what values were around money, what did you pick up from them? What were some of the things that most landed with you?
These are the roots of my relationship with money. And I've rewritten the story over time, but I saw my dad sacrifice. So we would live in the trailer, but his job site was usually hours away. And when you said city, and I need to just say it was town, sometimes 900 people, right? But these job sites would be in the middle of nowhere, and he would leave Sunday afternoon and get back late Friday night. And this was growing up. And so I just equated success with sacrifice and took that to the extreme, which I'll get to that story if you want in a little bit. But it was a great childhood. I mean, in terms of, I didn't ever want for anything, but I would hear about these stock payments that were being made every month, right? Didn't really know what they were. But as the story unfolds, it was, my parents were very wise in the way that they were spending their money and allocating. And little did I know, that was going on behind the scenes. So I think the big unlock for me, probably about close to 10 years ago, was I equated success in my mind was a lot of extrinsic things that now I realize I have a different definition of success, but it was sacrifice. And sometimes that even means sleep. It means relationships. It means family. It was like whatever you need to work really, really, really hard. And so I saw my dad do that. He worked really hard.
Wow. And as you were growing up and deciding that you were going to go to university, and as your maturation process is unfolding, how did this concept of working really hard, earning, efforting, obviously this correlates so directly to money and your time, how did that really impact some of your early choices?
It's such a great question because I look back at even university and always one of the hardest workers in the room, definitely not the smartest, terrible test taker. My good friends would be done with their ACTs and I just would hoping I'd get enough of a score to get into wherever. And so I think that there was this motivation by fear, of, okay, if you don't work hard enough, then this, then this, then this. And so the drive was fear-based without even realizing it of, I better do this in order to get ahead. Because I knew I didn't have that, naturally super, super smart person type thing. I didn't feel that I had that, but I knew I could play the game and I could compete if I worked hard enough. Right. So I did get a scholarship, a full ride academic scholarship. And I kind of thought I had to. Little did I know, my parents, they put my brother through college. I definitely would have had their support, but there was this sense of you just do this for yourself. Like you need to figure this out. And I think that drive, it can be a superpower and it can be your demise. And you put yourself into overdrive long enough and you run out of gas, right?
Mm. And as you were, getting yourself into university and starting to see how other people, I always find college is this interesting experience where for the first time, you're not at home, you're with other people, same sort of curiosity of the world, and everyone's coming to the table from such unique and different backgrounds. What was it like for you to be Amy Jo in the world and starting to see other backgrounds, how your friends were socialized or culturalized with money or resources or values? What was college like?
Growing up and moving a lot, I knew I could be happy anywhere. That was a gift. And to this day, like, put me anywhere on the map and I'll, you can figure it out. I think there wasn't an understanding of how big that gap can actually be of have and have not until I got into the brave new world, learning how to drive on the freeway. And so again, I just thought, what's my upside here? Like, what's my angle? And my competitive advantage has always been effort. I think that's where, as being a very results-oriented person, you push on the gas, you go faster, right? Like you could start to see the cause and effect, and sheer force of will becomes pretty powerful. It doesn't mean it's right.
Mm.
But it's amazing to look back and see, okay, I was pushing from a place of trying to prove something for so long, which I think that fuel if it's converted to purpose, works, but it's not sustainable if it's kind of that chip on your shoulder. And money is just energy. It's just a tool. It's just a vehicle, but it's also stability for people, right? And so that psychological safety is so important. And I've been around so many people who have incredible wealth. And it's interesting how you can still see some of them don't feel psychologically safe. And we're talking billionaires. Yeah. I know more billionaires as someone who grew up in a trailer than I don't quite understand, but it's fascinating to get to know them and be up close and personal.
What's interesting is being around wealth seems to come also at a young age, when you started to work in sports and you're around athletes and, certainly you were not an athlete competing with them or were in that same space as an assistant to them, but you were around and were exposed to and were in community with athletes. And athletes are also notorious for having lots of money or making lots of money, but also not having gone through, let's call it therapy or psychological unpacking of what do you do when you sort of go from nothing to extremely wealthy at a very young age. That must have been such a fascinating and interesting space to be in where talent is capitalized on the youth. And you see people who are going from zero to hero and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I manage that? What was that experience, these early experiences in your life? And how did you decide to sort of enter into the world of sports marketing?
Oh, it was to the extreme. I feel like I've seen such extremes, and I'm an adrenaline junkie. I'm a recovering hustler for sure. Being able to push something and see a result and push harder. And I realized at one point, I was chasing, grasping, grinding toward anything outside of myself. More following, had 1 million people following me on social and New York Times bestseller and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Nike and Hilton, all these clients and flying private. And it looked great from the outside looking in, right? I had employees in 10 different countries, but behind the scenes, what was really going on was 4 hours of sleep a night, 210 flights in a year. Health was on the rocks, relationships were on the rocks, marriage. And I realized, okay, so one day I'm standing at the departure board at JFK. I couldn't remember where I was going, trying to remember, where I was. And as I went to sign my name on the receipt for my coffee, I couldn't find my name. I didn't know my name. Mm. And that was when I realized I'm an emotionally and physically bankrupt millionaire. And I 15, 16 years in. And this was early days of really creating that relationship with money and what's important. And that, grasping, grinding toward anything outside myself. And the things that mattered, time was slipping through my fingers. And that was at my level. Imagine 100x at some of these clients. And so what a gift to be able to rewrite that story.
That's powerful. Starting your own business and very quickly rising to the top of your field is what I like to call something like positive trauma. It's something that happens quickly. It's good, but it's still traumatic. It takes some time for our bodies, our spirits, our minds to really catch up to what is happening in the world. And as you're growing and scaling up this business so quickly, obviously you're learning how to manage a P&L. You're learning, how to draw in your own salary, what to reinvest into the business. Were you applying, or how are you applying your understanding of finances and personal values and around money in these early stages of your business? Had you started to think about, all right, I'm taking some and putting it away for savings? Had you thought about 401ks? How were you, and at what points were you starting to think about future planning rather than just planning for today and planning for the business in front of you?
The great question. And the rocket ship kind of took off, and there wasn't this need for fundraising. It was very organic growth. The fundamentals in me growing up with have a portfolio, have a 401k. Like, I'm very grateful for that understanding of the blocking and tackling. Because what happened was I started to meet these people and get opportunities. And some of these were private investments, right? Get in early just because I happened to be in this circle. Oftentimes men who they'd be at a happy hour texting and they'd say, oh, I just got into this deal. And I'd be like, what do you mean you just got in or you just invested? What do you mean? And I'd ask questions and I thought they needed this huge check in order to get in. Well, no, I start learning more and more. And then I was part of the circle. And then I was able to invest and learn and ask all the questions and make the silly mistakes. And that's a completely different world. There's all these different aspects of wealth and savings and money working for you. And I'm just grateful I've had so much exposure to a lot of them as an investor, as someone who's raised money, as a board member, but also I think as a parent. I had this opportunity, our valuation was huge, and we had someone pretty well known come in and want to invest. And so I took on the money, even though we didn't necessarily need it. And I didn't even realize this, but my attorney at the time said, hey, do you want to take some money off the table? And I was like, what? What do you mean? And he's like, yeah, you built this thing from scratch. Look at this. And he was looking out for me. And I didn't even know that was an option. I mean, there's so many things that we don't necessarily know unless we experience and are exposed to it, or we go get super curious and vulnerable about asking those questions that you and I have talked about asking. Yeah, I'm going to ask because I made the mistake not to before.
So with these early checks that you wrote and, obviously starting to invest, I think beyond 401ks and having money in the S&P 500, beyond that, it tends to have a little bit of, I don't know, can be a little exciting, a little nervous. There's all these feelings that come up as we are looking to invest outside of these traditional things we're taught of. What were some of the things you felt? What was it like to write that first check? And how did your thesis or the way you thought about writing checks, how did that change over time as you became a lot more sophisticated?
Yeah, you just made me think of a story that one of my biggest lessons, but it comes back to money is influence. Money definitely gets to you. We vote with our dollars. And so the more women we can get on cap tables, the more women we can get in board seats and on stages, the better. And that's what we are doing at Renegade. And it's because of these scenarios like I just explained, and this one I'm about to share too. But we need more women in those seats, cap tables, board seats, stages, because that's where the power and influence and the decision making resides. And so I want to share an example of that in a minute. But first, I remember the very first check. Oh my goodness. It was one of my best friends from grade school she was an actress. And then she had this idea to start this company and it was going pretty well. And she needed some capital, but she also needed a lot of help on the business side, right? Here I am running this company, founder, CEO, and at over bandwidth already. And so excited for her and her company. And I did invest. I wrote the check. We took a picture. We're at my kitchen table. I literally was like, oh. And what we didn't do, though, was make sure we were aligned on what that check meant. And so that was a huge lesson of time or money or both, or what does this mean? Because it was a meaningful amount of money to her in the business. Yet I didn't have the capacity to be involved in the details. And so there was a situation where I've had all these different clients over the years, and one of which, billionaire that I was talking to and pitching down the road with my first company, and he taught me the lesson about alignment. He could care less how much money I was asking for. He wanted to know how aligned we were going to be.
Wow.
And it was this aha of like, oh, that's how these guys have made their money, is because nobody's really screwing anyone here. They're all just getting really filthy. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, yeah, you can get creative with the deal, but that alignment. And so if we're rowing in the same direction, we're in this together, like, I get it now. But he wasn't worried about the 7 whatever figures. He wanted to know percentages and path and where we were at that point with our EBITDA. So this friend of mine, we came to a pretty tough, healthy tension situation where I couldn't put the time in. Neither of us intentionally made that mistake of not discussing that, but the relationship really suffered from it. And I think we've all had those situations where someone asks you, oh, will you advise? I'll give you some, advisory shares. And that's great if you know what that means.
Yeah.
Our time is everything.
One of the things you mentioned that I think is powerful that most women also don't talk about, this is with respect to the investment that you are taking in for your business, is having the right people around us as key advisors and sounding boards to help us make informed decisions. Now, I've certainly been victim to many conversations in my life where I thought that I was supposed to know something, and because I didn't, that I was somehow in the wrong, that I was at fault because I didn't know. And what's really fascinating is the power of the right community and people around you, as indicated by your attorney, who was like, hey, let me look out for you. How have you been able to surround yourself with, I guess, the right key influencers who understood subject domain expertise and were able to and continue to support you as you make decisions? What does that look like?
It's almost like a collection over time of always, you start with a relationship, and I have 2 people popping into mind immediately. One, it was the person that kind of let me in on that first deal, and I had a million questions, and he answered them, and he was so generous with his time and willingness to explain and share. Because there are a lot of terms and functions that I think are intentionally tried. They've been designed to maybe intimidate, but really a lot of this is just simple math, right? It's not usually rocket science. So it's just that the terms can even, and the process can even be intimidating. So Kenny Tomlin, huge in my life for unlocking opportunity, but also educating. I think that's the big thing, because he instilled confidence in myself. So I would start asking the right questions. And then you just continue to pay it forward. So look at Renegades. I will never claim to know everything. I've just been exposed to a lot of different aspects of investment, money, and usually have someone in a corner somewhere that I feel, can be our expert. But when we start to share what we've learned, which isn't easy because that means we're talking about money, and that's usually very private, that's when I think the value is exchanged. So, with Renegade, we have Renegade Global Ventures, where we're democratizing access to deal flow, but also flow of capital. We have the Renegade Multifamily Office. And so the second person would be Lisa DeTana at Raymond James. She's one of the global top 50. She's one of 3 women in the global top 50 financial financial advisors. And she's been so generous with her experience too. Because I did have major Bambi legs after everything I've been through. You get PTSD if you have a bad experience, whether it's real estate or private investment or stock market. And it's hard to build that confidence back up because your money is usually created from your time. Okay, quick time out here before we get to the next part. If you like what you're hearing, or if you are a fan of the show, obviously a rate, review, subscribe, all the things. We'd love for you to share this with your friends. We are on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, and all the other places. If you want to stay in touch and get updates and insights via newsletter, would love for you to join. You can go to amyjomartin.com/newsletter to receive our updates. We have a book. It's called Renegades Write the Rules. It's a New York Times bestseller, and you can find that on our website or on Amazon or whatever. And then if you're interested in becoming a renegade, head to renegade.global. You can click on membership. You can apply there. We help female leaders, executives, founders, and companies to really up-level their lives. We have curriculum, we have community, and we have accountability. And we've been doing this for quite some time. We're industry agnostic, senior leaders really from all over the globe, but also every vertical and set of experience. And it's a pretty incredible crew, but also the curriculum is everything I've learned in my career. It's important, I believe, to unlock that genius, that talent, that secret sauce, that renegade, voice of authority, and your thought leadership to help the world, really, right? We need more individuals speaking up and sharing their thoughts, opinions, voices, and that in turn also ends up netting out with generating more income, investment. We have a strong financial side of this, opportunities there, and education. Getting on boards, getting on stages, just making your impact. So that's it. And hopefully we stay in touch.
One of the things I find so incredible and impressive about this body of work that you've not only created, but that you are actively creating is twofold. One are just the legs and revenue streams you've opened up for yourself in terms of, publishing and speaking, creating community, and doing so through the lens of evangelizing and helping to activate and inspire others. And what I think is powerful is the energetics around that. Money to me represents just a tremendous amount of power and energy. And so the efforts that you're putting forward with respect to the family office, the opportunities to invest with other incredible female founders is energetically allowing others to sort of benefit from your own personal access and the people who really respect you, which is very exciting. And so as you're looking in this active stage of development and growth and expansion, how do you see and what is your dream for these next stages of wealth creation for yourself and for the community that you're building around you?
Great question. And it has been such an organic process. And I saw someone, not too long ago, and they said, this was your vision many years ago. And I was like, really? No, I don't remember having this, being able to see this. And what she was referring to is just changing the economic models, changing the way that things have always been done in terms of the flow and the growth of money and business. And a lot of that has come from the leverage of this community, right? I'm a big believer in leverage, and we have, access to deal flow that is incredible. And when it's shared, we're able to invest in what we feel is important, pool our money together, learn while we're doing, get that feedback loop directly from the founders. In some cases, let's take, Circle AI is a company that is really transforming women's healthcare using data and biometrics and accelerating the rate at which we fully understand what we're dealing with, to create solutions and opportunities that haven't existed before. And that's something that's important to us as renegades, right? And we're starting with infertility, but this is a healthcare company that will transcend. When I was approached about this opportunity to invest, do my diligence, then asked to sit on the board, first female on the board, that seat has been so helpful and influential and powerful to open up the doors to renegades, right? And it's also been extremely helpful to the company because not only the capital and the amount of money and checks and dollars we've written, but also the feedback loop of we're the core audience. This is the demo. We're the target. And so we can provide amazing data and we're huge advocates. So it's like, as you write a check and we're putting a special purpose vehicle together, you're kind of taking out insurance because you also get to talk about it and be authentic of how it's impacting or that challenge is impacting your life. Use your social media, use your contacts, your network to help the company. And it's like doubling down on your own investment. It's so cool. And then Sheryl Sandberg is involved now. And this thing just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it's like, wow, imagine what we could do together.
And what we are doing together, you know?
And we are. And it starts with an idea. Like, I didn't even know half this was possible. Like, well, why can't we try this?
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, the thing that I really want to emphasize is Renegade as a global community, as a powerhouse of women creating impact is so helpful because what I think is special about your community and your programming and the accelerator is an opportunity to help women unlock their voices. And I feel this unlock is happening not only through personal self-expression and personal branding and platforming, but unlocking our voices is, again, unlocking our energy and investing. And it's really an expansion. And so I think that there's something powerful about unlocking ourselves in so many different ways. And so thank you for the work you've been doing to really foster and create safe spaces to be vulnerable, ask questions, and share and really expose each other.
Thank you for being a leader in, this conversation is exactly what a renegade represents, what you've done. You had this idea and look at what you're doing. These are really important conversations.
Thank you, Amy Jo. Now, obviously, you've got, you mentioned being a mom. You've got a little one. You are paying it forward generationally and creating new young leaders in the world. As you're thinking about what sorts of examples and how you will be fostering conversations around financial literacy and obviously being a renegade entrepreneur and building and growing, certainly you'll be leading by example. But as you're thinking about what some of these inflection points of information might be or key moments, what are some things that you're looking forward to imparting on your little one?
Well, it's so timely you asked that because tomorrow he is traveling with me to go to a speaking engagement. And I think it's so important that he sees and he gets to witness what I'm doing when I am away, travel, working, right? Because seeing, your mom or your dad get to enjoy what they're doing. He knows he's a renegade and he calls himself renegade. And he talks about it's so awesome. But he's 4, by the way, for those listening. He gets to actually witness someone who is enjoying what they're doing, making an impact, a leader. He knows that I do work hard, but also I can tell with a lot of humility. There's been a lot of reconciling that I've been doing because pre-Lincoln, it was all career all the time, right? And you hit that burnout and then you start to learn new lessons. And I've been extremely intentional about really trying to understand how I'm wired to rewire. And a lot of it's neuroscience. It's understanding what can we do to make shifts because my default is high octane. My default is harder. And as a mom, I don't want to be on the road all the time, but when I am, can I bring him with me sometimes or can I get in and out quicker? what can go? What can I divest in? Not just invest, but where can I get more time? What can I delete? What can I delegate? And just make sure that time is as potent as possible. And so I made some huge shifts. It was last fall. And it was kind of a line in the sand, like, okay, step up. And I call it the season of my red pen. But how can I be at capacity and really pushing toward potential, which is infinite, versus kind of shaking and tapped at bandwidth, those 24 hours in a day. And I mean, I got ruthless. I had to make some hard calls of things to stop. And just now I'm getting ready to go pick him up. It's 2 p.m. Central, and I'm going to go hang out with him. We've got a puppet show we got to do. And this might sound like, but it is pencils down, because again, back to, if I'm not careful, I'll slip into chasing, grasping, grinding toward things for that external whatever. And time is slipping through my fingers. And it's been a really eye-opening season. And the ROI couldn't be better.
Yeah. Oh, I just got chills. You are in the alignment of where you are meant to be. And it feels like it's all unfolding perfectly. 2 questions that I love asking. One is, obviously, we look at wealth creation and investing and sort of a lot of the conversations around how does it feel and what are the emotions around it. But certainly one of the best things about whether that's being smart with money or however you want to frame it is the ability for us to exercise it in so many ways. And so I'd love to know, what are some of your favorite ways of spending money in the ways that make you feel the best?
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And I want to tell you something that I just cut that was not feeling good. But oh gosh, it's experiences. It really is. Or what else I'm really into lately is home. Just, I am a very frugal person. I don't care a lot about fashion or whatever. But there are some things around the home, like I really want the backyard. We have hot summers in Austin. And so that I want us to feel that sanctuary, being able to swim and invite people over and stuff. So just kind of interesting nesting period, but it's experiences. We tend to, look at, okay, I'm going to work and spend my time to create money. But a lot of times you can spend some money to create time. And then sometimes you can cut things and open up a lot of time. Yeah, I don't look at a handbag or go shopping. I do not like to shop. If I see an expensive pair of shoes, which I don't even know the name brands very well, I'm speaking to someone who comes from the industry. I appreciate it and I think it's amazing. I don't even know how to pick it out, but I see an investment when I see those things, right? I'm like, oh, you could. And it just, I don't know. I'd rather have things working for me when I'm sleeping.
Amy Jo, I love that.
Personal brand, right?
Yeah.
You're present when you are not. It's like, let's just invest.
What I value so much about your perspective is, and I've said this many times before, that after having a career in fashion, I had more of an investment in handbags than I did a 401k. And let me tell you, that didn't feel good when all of a sudden I realized that many of the people who I knew who were also working in my same industry were independently wealthy or wealthy from their families, and working in fashion was literally for them a luxury because they did not have to worry about these things. And meanwhile, I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to keep up with the Joneses, right? Or keep up in these certain ways. And so your natural inclination towards investing or looking at building financial, I think the word is stability in your life, I think is such a valuable lesson or quality that you have at a young age that seems to have really carried through. So that is impressive and admirable, because I think it's really, it sets you up in a way that I think our society and culture doesn't necessarily tell us to set ourselves up in.
Well, thank you. I'm still making big mistakes left and right and learning. And I think that's the key of sharing, right?
Yeah.
Especially with Renegade, it's extremely diverse group of women from so many backgrounds. And when we have that mosaic of different types of intellectual capital and life experiences, we get to exchange and learn from each other in a, hyper syndicated and just exponential way. So I love that we aren't in this bubble and I get to learn from you. And that's what it's about more than anything.
Absolutely. So shifting gears to the future of your body of work on this planet, Amy Jo Martin at 105 years old, maybe 110, we'll see how far you want to push it. But, obviously you've already created an incredible body of work in the short time that you've been on this planet, but there is so much more ahead of you. And with the vitality, strength, and community and ability to receive and to create, I imagine there's something more and bigger that is not only unfolding already as we speak, yet to unfold into the future. And so as you were to look back on your beautiful life at this distant point in the future, what's the body of work and impact that you hope to leave behind?
I think about the seats on cap tables, the board seat, the stages, like the more women we can get in those spots, the better. I mean, that sitting back and being able to just see that, and being able to contribute to how to get there. It doesn't just happen, clearly. We would have already done it. This is not necessarily an easy fix or easy job. So continuing to lift, to share information, to open those doors, provide the resources, the opportunities, not just mentorship, right? We need sponsorship and we need advocacy in the rooms that we're not. So I have goosebumps. So for me, it would be looking back and being able to see all these others who, were able to continue to get this flywheel turning. Yeah. More. Just send that elevator down, you get in, you go up, you don't ask questions, you send it right back down. And then you send 4 down and 5 down. And let's keep sending that elevator down.
Heck yes. Oh, I love it. So amazing. It's so incredible and powerful. Amy Jo, when we're looking at how we as the audience can elevate and support your work and the things that you're looking to create impact in this world, what can we do to support you? What do you need right now?
Oh, I'm trying to receive that. Thank you. We are always looking for like-minded, like-hearted individuals, women to join us at Renegade. So obviously and you can follow me at Amy Jo Martin on Instagram. Renegade.global is our website. But I think it's the fierce bravery, right? And being very focused with each other's goals, right? So when we are able to exchange that value with each other and we're just as committed I'm just as committed to your goal as you are to mine, that creates a whole new layer of results, success, leverage, right? So I think just those ruthless priorities, making sure they're not just yours, but helping the others that are aligned. And that's a way to play the game, right? That's how we get ahead quicker. Instead of being in our own pocket, our own little, smaller pool or playground, we have to start joining these things together because we need critical mass in money, in power, in board seats, in decision-making, in politics. We need more critical mass.
Yes. Through the Renegade Accelerator, Amy Jo, you are building some critical mass, which is extremely exciting to be a part of and to witness and to see continue to grow larger and to evolve. I think it's powerful to see your voice in so many different media outlets, your podcast, Why Not Now, your books, your speaking. It's clear that your voice and message has the ability and does meet people where they're at. And so there's something very relatable and accessible to your messaging. And I appreciate the legacy and the body of work that you're leaving here on this planet. So thank you very much, Amy Jo, for being here today. I am grateful for your spirit, your time and energy. And I'm so excited to see what you create next and what we create next together.
Oh, I love this show. I'm so excited to tell everybody about it. This is the conversation we need to have. Thank you. Thank you. This is a mission. And if we can shift our relationship with time and money, that's a big part. I think a lot of solutions for all economic impact, not just for women, but we need more women making decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?